राम राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय राधा श्याम सुंदर राधा, श्याम सुंदर राधे। जय राधा गोविंद राधा, गोविंद राधे। जय राधा गोपीनाथ राधा, गोपीनाथ राधे। जय जगन्नाथ, जय जगन्नाथ, जय बलदेवा, जय सुभद्रा, जय गौरनित्याय, जय गौरनित्याय, जय गौरनित्याय, जय गौरनित्याय। जय पंचतत्वा, जय पंचतत्वा, जय पंचतत्वा, जय पंचतत्वा। जय जय प्रभुपाद, प्रभुपाद, जय शील प्रभुपाद। जय जय गुरुदेव, गुरुदेव, जय जय गुरुदेव। श्री राधा श्याम सुंदर भगवान की जय, शील प्रभुपाद की जय, गुरु महाराज की जय, हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय।
Jai. Thank you, Anasuya Mataji. Thank you, Mataji. So we welcome His Grace Prasanatma Balram Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Pranam.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dhanwas pranams to you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Over to you, Prabhu. Hare Bol.
Thank you so much. All right. Hare Krishna to all the devotees. Dhanwas pranams. So welcoming you all to another session on the Shrimad Bhagavatam. The start of the week after a 2-day break. We are resuming where we left off. So continue. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayet Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatam Maham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. All right, Hare Krishna once again to all the devotees. So I'm seeing some raised hands already, so that's wonderful. So today we will be, let me just share 1 second. I hope my audio and video is okay. You're able to hear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. So I've just shared the screen. The verses that we'll be looking at today is from the 3rd canto, 1st chapter, 16 to 19. So this chapter is titled Questions by Vidura. Okay. The verse 16 is like this. Hare Krishna. So just request devotees to kindly go on mute. Thank you. Swayam dhanurdhvari nidhaya mayam ratu puro marmashu tadito api sa itham atyulbhana karna bhanair gathavyatho yad urumanayanaha. So, Swayam dhanurdhvari nidhaya mayam bharatu puro marmashu aditopi sa itham atyulbhana karnabhanair gatavyatho ayadurumanayanaha. So, yeah, devotees, anybody wants to read this particular shloka, please go ahead. I see Vasudha Mataji, she has raised her hands. Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat
Hare Krishna, Dandavat pranams to you.
Swayam dhanodvari nidaya maya bratu puro marma sutadito api sayitam atulbana karnabanair gata vyato yad urumanayana. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji. So the translation is like this. So, anybody else wants to read? Anasuya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat pranam.
Then
Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thus being pierced by arrows through his ears and affected to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's place. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So thank you so much. We'll also see the other shlokas. Shobha Mataji, do you want to try this shloka?
Hare Krishna, Dandavat pranam Prabhuji. Hare Bol.
Then it's pronounced to you.
Am I audible, Prabhuji?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sa nirghata kaurava punyalabho labto gajatvaya tritha patha pathani anvakratha kramat punya chikritaya sayovrayam adishtitho yani sahasramurti. Hare Krishna, Dandavat pranam Prabhuji. Translation.
Translation. If somebody else can read, that will be wonderful.
Hare
Thank
Bol.
you for
Thank you,
reading the
Prabhuji. Hare
verse.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sharmila Mataji, do you want to read the translation?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. By his piety, Vidura achieved the advantages of the pious Kauravas. After leaving Hastinapura, he took shelter of many places of pilgrimages, which are the Lord's lotus feet. With a desire to gain a high order of pious life, he traveled to holy places where thousands of transcendental forms of the Lord are situated. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So thank you so much, Mataji. So we can do one more shloka. Verse 18. Anybody wants to read this? Chandana Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much. Dandavat pranams.
Then was pronounced to you.
Pureshu punyo pavanadrikunjeshvapankatoyeshu sarashu anantalinghe samalankriteshu chacharatithayatanesvananyaha. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. The translation, who would like to read?
I'll read, Prabhuji.
Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. He began to travel alone, thinking only of Krishna, through various holy places like Ayodhya, Dwarka, and Mathura. He traveled where the air, hill, orchard, river, and lake are all pure and sinless, and where the forms of the unlimited decorate the temples. Thus, he performed the pilgrim's progress. Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
Thank you, Mata. So we just have another verse, so we can cover that also. Verse 19. I see hands raised by Krishnamurti Prabhu. Do you want to read, Prabhu? Is it okay?
Prabhuji, so a little bit risk there. So I can't able to pronounce properly.
Okay. We can ask Sudha Mataji to do it then, and you can read the translation.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Am I audible,
Hare
Prabhuji?
Yes, you are audible, Mata.
Gam paryatanetya vivikta vritti sada plutodha shayano vaditaha alakshita svair avadhuta vesho pratani tere haritoshanani. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Prabhu, now you can read the translation.
By all means, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
While traversing the earth, he simply performed duties of please the Supreme Lord Hari. His occupation was pure and independent. He was constantly sanctified by taking his bath in holy places. Although he was in the dress of a mendicant and has no air dressing nor a bed on which to lie. Thus he was always unseen by his various relatives. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. So thank you so much to all the devotees. So it was so nice that all of you were able to read the verses. So now, all right. So before we get started, the Mangalacharan. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devan Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Sya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Khanta Radha Kanta Namostute Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so Hare Krishna. So if you're looking at the first verse, that is verse number 16. Swayam dhanurdhari nidhaya mayam bhathu puro marmashu tadito api sa itham atyulna karna bhanair Gatavyatho ayad urumanayana. So the translation, thus being pierced by arrows through his ears and afflicted to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's palace. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. So we'll try to see what Prabhupada is trying to say in the purports. We are not reading the purport, like you all are aware, but we'll try to cover those as we move on. So before I get started, I'd like to seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, senior devotees who are here. Kindly bless me so that I'll be able to speak, the right words come out at the right moment, in the right spirit. And I'm doing this as a seva, a service for my Guru Maharaj, for the Parampara, and for the pleasure of the Lordships, and as a purification for myself. So on that note, we'll start. Thank you, and Hare Krishna. So what are the takeaways that we have here? I mean, all of you are knowing the background. This is where Vidura is actually asking questions, and then there is this background of how Vidura reached a particular place where they are speaking to Maitreya and all that. So before that, we know that he was in the palace. And how did he leave the palace? What made him leave the palace and then take on this wonderful pilgrimage that he did? So that is what we will try to see here. So the background is that, of course, as you all know, Duryodhana actually has insulted Vidura. Vidura, we know, is the elder. He is the brother of his father, that is Duryodhana's father. But then, without being mindful of the age and the respect that has to be given, Duryodhana whimsically insults him because Vidura actually gave a suggestion which was contrary to what Duryodhana desired. This was with respect to the Pandavas. So the insult was so much. I mean, that's how this insult is described as what here? As the arrows that pierced the ears of Vidura. So we know that words can be sharper or it can cause more pain than actually an arrow or a bullet. That's what we've heard. So you see a similar comparison being made here, where the words are piercing the ears like how an arrow penetrates, and then it is reaching the core of Vidura's heart. So he gets a shock, or there is a jolt that he gets. And so now, what does Vidura do after that? Now, before we get there, we all understand that we do get afflicted by words. What is afflicted? Afflicted means like deeply affected by the words. If somebody tells something not so great about us, then definitely we take it to our heart. They say, no, like we literally take it to the heart and it pains us. Especially if the words are uttered by the near and dear ones, our own family members or friends, so on and so forth, people whom we are acquainted with. But then actually, when words actually can also galvanize one into action, into real action, like for a transcendentalist or for a pure devotee, it's a moment of realization when there are certain words which actually triggers a certain amount of response, which becomes path breaking, or it turns them away from what they were doing and then forces them to take on something new. Or something which they have not been done, or away from the normal or the routine. So now this is what happened to Vidura. We'll also try to see what is the difference between, though this particular effect is there on all the human beings, whether they are devotees, they are atheists, they are theists, all types of people. With the moment they hear words which is hurting them, then definitely there is a reaction that happens internally. So let's try to see what is the type of reaction that generally happens for all of us, for individuals. There are two categories that are possible. So now one is to get angry. Of course, that's a very simple, easy to understand quick thing. All of us, we would have definitely gone through that. So we'll find anger rising in us the moment we hear some words which are not so great. And then if somebody is turning us down or any of those things, which hurts our pride or our ego, then there is this anger that begins to build in internally. Then the responses could be like we try to defend our position or our statement. We try to justify it. Or sometimes we might vilify other person because we'll say that that's not correct. And then we try to say that you have always been doing like this. You're known for such comments, that's not true, and so on and so forth. So we try to vilify. And then, but these are all more of internal, external in nature, where the emotions are shown. Sometimes some people also go on the other side. They go more internal. They don't explode externally, but then they implode internally. So what happens? They become very remorse when they hear some hurting words. And then they go into a shell. These sort of things keep happening to all of us. Now, we also should understand, or all we know, that these are all material reactions based on our bodily identification. Now, there is another way, whether it is internal or external, the reaction is still on the material plane, and that's the aspect that we'll have to understand. I am just trying to analyze the various reactions that are possible. But then whatever is the reaction, whether it is explosive in nature, like being angry, being sarcastic, or being offensive, or going into a shell, being remorse, either way, the platform is, if it is on the material nature, then it's not a very good situation to be in. So now there is another way of looking at this entire aspect. So some people might introspect, and then they might say, why is he talking like this? Generally, he is not like this, or she is not like this. What made him to speak like this? Use of the faculty of intelligence to try to understand or analyze the situation, and then holding all these emotions at bay, not quickly getting angry. So this knee-jerk reaction, what we discussed earlier, is not seen, but then there is some amount of analysis that is happening. That is, they try to meditate on it. And then sometimes, they might accept it, saying that, yes, this was my fault, and that is why he reacted. Probably I shouldn't have done it, these sort of things. And then this type of analysis means that a person is stepping away from the situation. He is not allowing himself to be emotionally tied to that situation that brought about this kind of a feeling or this kind of emotion. So not feeling very sorry about the whole thing, not feeling remorse, not becoming very angry, and then thereby then accepting it as the sanction of the Lord, as the Lord being the supreme authority. So then everything, not a blade of grass, we know, does not move without the sanction of the Lord. So if something is happening to me, that means that there is God's sanction in this, and that means then in my own best interest, I need to accept it and not react or respond in all those other ways that we just discussed now. So this way, allowing, not being emotional actually helps, being analytical, not allowing the senses to take over or control, not becoming too agitated in the mind, and then allowing that. So now, which is a better option, or which is the best option? Now, people will definitely say it will depend on time, place, circumstances, and all that. But Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he is saying that a pure devotee of the Lord, what do we mean by a pure devotee? Pure devotee is one who has accepted 100% the supremacy of the Lord. He has accepted his position as an eternal servitor of the Lord, and he or she has accepted that he is, me as an individual, I am very insignificant, whereas the Lord is everywhere. He is all in all. So now, and then who is continuing to do service in that mood? Such a person is not perturbed by the awkward situations or positions that are created. Now, who is actually creating this awkward position or situation? Take the same example of Vidura and Duryodhana and all the others, that particular situation that we are discussing now. Who's doing it? Do you think it was Duryodhana who is the reason for putting Vidura in this awkward position?
It is the will of the Lord, Prabhuji.
The Lord, Prabhuji.
Yeah, so you all know what I meant to say. That's so nice. So it is not Duryodhana who was actually responsible, or it was not he who was doing it. And that is the analysis that Vidura makes. See, it is so easy for us to get to the right answer when we are talking about the third person. The only problem that where we go wrong, or rather I go wrong, is when it is happening to my own self. That is when I'm not in a position where we will allow ourselves to think that way, because the emotions get a better grip of us. How many of you have experienced this? It becomes so easy when we are talking about the third person, but then when it comes to our own experiences, then we don't so quickly or immediately come to such a conclusion. I mean, you can just put a thumbs up if you have experienced that, so I'll know that all of us have that. Yeah, thank you so much. So now this is easy for us to understand. Yes, and Prabhupada rightly is bringing out a very wonderful verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which all of you are aware of, where it very clearly says that we are not the doer, but it is the material nature that is binding us, that is forcing us to do certain things. This type of an analysis or understanding is very necessary, because that will determine how we are going to react, how we are going to accept. What is that verse? Anybody wants to try to say that verse? What is the verse that we are talking about? Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, this is the verse that Prabhupada is. Hare Krishna.
3.27.
3.27. That's where Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. So, where the conditioned soul is actually thinking that he or she is the doer, but in reality, they are not the doers. They are being governed by the material nature, the forces of material nature, and that is what is forcing them or making them to do certain things. So this way, we can understand how, or rather, Vidura was able to split or separate the action and the doer, and then he was able to see the doer separately from the action, because he realized that it was not he who is doing, but then it is actually his material nature. Or what are the three material natures? Or all the combination of all of the three, Sattva, Rajo, and Tamo Gun. These three, in various combinations, are present in all the individuals, and based on the weightage or on which is prominent and which is less, the qualities manifest in that way. So the situation could be the same. There might be two people who are being subject to a certain situation. Each person might react in a different way. So how is that possible? Because of the material nature that is governing them, because of how what is the type of material nature that they have, and that is how then the reactions also will differ. So this is something that we all know. It's just that we need to apply it to ourselves whenever such a awkward situation comes up. Okay, and then we generally think we are the doers. That is what happens. And then when this happens to us, then what do? We try to do all the things that we discuss now. Sometimes we get angry. Then we try to defend ourselves. We try to push back. Sometimes we might be in a little more better position. We might even try to tolerate, and then the person who inflicted the same. But then that tolerance is also based on like bearing it. It's a discomfort. I'm not liking it, but then that's okay. I will tolerate it. It's a good quality to have, to cultivate, because Krishna also says there's the word for tolerance in Bhagavad Gita. What is the word? Anybody wants to say that?
Titiksha, Prabhuji.
Titiksha, very nice. Thank you, Mataji. And what is that verse where Krishna says we'll have to tolerate? Yeah. Yes, go ahead, Mataji. So Krishna is very clearly saying we need to tolerate, we need to develop that tolerance. So that's a good thing. But then it doesn't stop there, actually. We will have to tolerate. So tolerating somebody is the beginning of our journey towards realizing ourselves. But then it cannot stop there. So we need to forgive. And that's the next stage that Vidura is, we'll try to discuss that. See, what is happening is, we understand, so once we are able to bring this knowledge that we are not this body, and then we think that we are the doer, but then in one sense, we are not the doer, because we are not this body, but we are the eternal soul. So when we are able to see the individuals as souls, and the situations that they are in is more because of the karma that is acting on them, the way they behave, the way they are able to, if somebody is very short-tempered, somebody is very lethargic, somebody is very calm and then composed. All of this is coming based on the nature that they have come with. And this nature, the material nature that is controlling them, is based on the activities that they have done in the past. But then if you just split or segregate that particular nature and the individual, and then look at all of these individuals as individuals and nothing more, then definitely our reaction to situations will not be so dramatic or so knee-jerk like the ones that we discussed. It could be internal or external. It could be feelings of remorse or going into a shell, or it could be outburst. But either way, that is from a material platform, and that is something that Vidura never did. So none of what we discussed before is correct with respect to a pure devotee or a practicing devotee. So we should try to strive for it. So we all, as practicing devotees, especially me, will have to try to set aside these things that we discussed now, because those emotions will come very quickly. But then ensure that I'm able to take a grip of myself before I react, and then see the things in the way it has to be seen. And by showing some tolerance, by showing some patience. So that is why all these are glorified as virtues. It is virtuous to be patient. It is virtuous to be tolerant, and all of that, because that will lead to forgiveness. We cannot carry or we cannot allow things to affect us in our heart, because then that will linger for a very long time, and that aftertaste, it's not very nice. And then if we have more and more of such things that comes and settles in our heart, then our character also is changed to that extent, because we get convinced that this is how it is. Basically, what is this intelligence that we have? It is actually a sum total of all the experiences that we have. If we don't have, which we have allowed it to come and settle in our heart, so that it comes to the surface whenever a similar such situation is happening, and then we respond in that same way. So this is a little long shot, because it's not a corrective process, but then it's a process that's going to take a little time, because we have been conditioned to respond in a certain way, and now we are going against that, or we're trying to stop that and then respond in the proper way. So Vidura is saying here that he's showing us how to use the intelligence, be calm, and accept what is being inflicted on oneself as what I deserve. So that is something that I did not desire. Might not be desiring it, but then it has been inflicted on me because I deserve it, because of some basic, some fault where somewhere in my previous lives, or somewhere I have done something, and because of which I deserve it. And that is why it has a sanction of the Lord. And how do we know it has a sanction of the Lord? Because it has happened already. It is happening. So I've been put in an awkward position. So like this, accepting the situation, not blaming anyone, not blaming the person who inflicted it onto us, and hence accept the situation as it is. There's a wonderful comparison that Vidura is saying, and Prabhupada has brought that out very nicely. So accepting the situation becomes possible once we realize that it is the external energy of the Lord which is responsible for my position, for my awkward position, or for my being in the receiving end. It is the external energy of the Lord. Which is the external energy of the Lord? So that we know is Maya Devi. So the moment we accept it, what is happening actually? In actuality, we are surrendering. See, the moment you accept means what? You are actually surrendering. You are agreeing. You are surrendering to that. And the moment there is surrender, then the moment we accept that it is because of my karma, that means we are surrendering to the laws of karma. We are surrendering to the external energy of the Lord. So the moment there is surrender to any form of the Lord, then definitely the Lord becomes happy, or we are getting that prayojana or that benefit, which is by way of the Lord begins to respond or reciprocate. His mercy begins to flow, and then He gives us more intelligence so that we are able to get out of the situation or similar situations as we move on. It's not like in one shot that it is all over. It's a gradual process for many of us, because we've been conditioned for too long. And then that gradual process is step by step. So a little bit of this surrender, and then a little bit of that mercy. And that mercy strengthens us to do little more surrender. It helps us to understand things a little more better. And then because of that, there is more acceptance, so there is more surrender. And then again, little more mercy comes in, then it goes on like that. So that the devotees who have accepted the situation, who have surrendered to the situation, invariably they are linking it to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and accept it as their wish. What are they actually doing? They are actually doing a practical application of the learning that they have gone through, the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of Bhagavatam, any of our scriptural things that you see in the Vaishnava culture. Whatever is being learned is being put into practical application. And this is the stage where there is an opportunity for us to put it to practice. If we don't do this, then the learning becomes separate and our actions become separate. So they are not coming together. So devotees like Vidura and all are wonderful examples, and especially these shlokas very nicely are bringing out this aspect of how one needs to accept the situation and not get emotionally tied up. Even though there are emotions that can come in, we'll have to calm that emotion down by the use of proper intelligence, and then look at it as an observer, as a seer. You know, they say, no, like, be a seer. Be a seer means watch as a third person. Like they say, there are two people who are fighting, or there are two groups which are fighting, and then you're a third person who are seeing it. So you're not affected by it in an emotional way. But then if you talk to the people who are involved in it, they are so emotional. You just touch them itself, they'll want to hit you. So I mean, it's so much high the emotions are, because they are involved. Body, soul, everything is involved in it. So that is how the Adhyatmika says that we'll have to detach ourselves. And this is the detachment that we need to practice, which is detaching ourselves from the body, detaching ourselves from the various influences that are being had on the body, the various surroundings itself, because the whole material surrounding, the environment itself is material. So detaching ourselves from that will help us to look at it. Now, there are many people who have done this, just not Vidura. There are some examples. Some of the examples that I have just made a note is about Parikshit Maharaj. I'm sure some of you would have thought of that. So Parikshit Maharaj was cursed by Shringi, but then he accepted it. Then and then he surrendered to the awkward position that he was put in. And then he said, what next for me? And then he went forward. So we know that story very well. And then there is another story in the Bhagavatam which comes to our mind, which is about Chitraketu. So we know that Chitraketu was cursed by Mother Parvati, and then he accepted that curse so willingly, and then he becomes Vitarasura, the demon, and then who gets killed by Indra. And then his consciousness was so wonderful, even though he was born as a demon. So this is another situation where actually Lord Shiva speaks highly of Chitraketu, and then he says that he is as good as me, and then we are friends, and so on and so forth. So accepting things willingly, whatever is coming by way of providence or by way of situations, without any resistance, without counter cursing. Actually, it says there that Chitraketu had the power, the ability to counter curse Mother Parvati, but he does not do it. It was not that it was just weakling, oh, she was a very powerful lady, what to do? I just accepted it. No, he could counter curse. That's what is mentioned in the Bhagavatam. But then that was in the 6th chapter and 17th chapter on verse 37. It says that he was powerful and competent to curse Mother Parvati, but he humbly accepts it. He doesn't get into that mode. And this is the standard behavior of a Vaishnava, Prabhupada says. He concludes there. And he says this is a sadhu lakshanam. So whatever we are seeing or discussing now is the lakshanam of a sadhu. And then now, how is it possible to not get agitated when we are not get agitated? So we will not get agitated when we are detached. Now, how do I get detached? So that is with knowledge. Now, how knowledge is going to help me in the detachment? By knowing our position as nu or minute or small, infinitesimal part of the whole thing. And the Lord is Vibhu. And then we are just a small component. Like we can picture ourselves as a very, very small component in a huge machinery with so many complex things running. So that part becomes insignificant. And the movement of that particular part is actually governed by the various forces that act on it. It doesn't move on its own, but it depends on the various forces that are acting on it. Maybe a small wheel, but then it gets moved because of some other indirect force that is coming there. So like this, we have to understand that the Lord is the controller, then he will protect me. So now knowledge leads to faith or reaffirmation of the faith. So we'll understand that faith is high, knowledge is high, and application is high. Then the response like Vidura or like Parikshit Maharaj or like Chitraketu or even like the mother of Dhruva in Mother Suniti in that particular pastime, all of them, we'll be able to respond in that way. We might be able to take refuge in the Lord and then accept the situation and then move on. So that is why this word, which is Gata Vyataha, is very important. It says that without being sorry for oneself. That becomes a lamentation mood. If we become very sorry about the situation that I am in, it is like lamentation. This should not have happened, but it happened to me. The crying, cribbing, lamentation. That's a mood in the Tamoguna, right? So without that, without Gata Vyataha, accept the situation in a very matter-of-fact way and then go on. See, all people are actually acting on the influence of external nature. So separating the action from the actor, split it, then we can ignore it without any feelings. This is possible by the verse that we just saw also, which is Prakriti Kriyamana. So like this, we saw a little bit in detail about what went through Vidura and what is the message that Bhagavatam had, what Prabhupada was trying to convey to us with respect to accepting it as the external energy of the Lord. And there's a very nice, interesting statement that Prabhupada makes. He says that Vidura realized what is the external energy of the Lord, and he also knew what was the internal energy of the Lord. So he understood, or he concluded that by using the internal energy of the Lord, that is by the help of the Paramatma which is within me, I am able to come to terms with the external energy of the Lord which is acting on my body, and thereby he is able to maintain his balance, and then he just leaves the place, even though the comments were ear-piercing, like an arrow, and then it was actually supposed to go into the heart, but then it doesn't agitate him in the way that it would agitate a normal person. So it's such a simple connection of somebody saying something wrong, and then it is affecting us or we get agitated. But then there is so much in between that we'll have to put into practice. Thereby, the agitation or the words that pierces and comes into our heart doesn't lead to an agitation, but then we are able to forgive and then move on, or not lose our balance and then not have ill feelings with respect to that individual, and so on and so forth. So that's the philosophy in just put it across very crudely, but I'm sure many of you would have experienced or we would have gone through situations where we might have done this in many cases, but then it's not that we have not done this. In certain instances, we would have shown tolerance. In some instances, we would have completely forgiven somebody because of having shown patience. Like say, in between things would have happened. Like say, we'll realize that we would have been judgmental. We would have jumped to a conclusion. Later on, we would have realized that that was not the situation. Why? Or he was not the one who was responsible. It was something else. And then we get consoled, or then we are able to forgive that person. But here, it is at a slightly more different level, which is at the spiritual level, where it is being brought out very nicely by Prabhupada, like how we need to view it or analyze it, and then try to imbibe that within us. And that's the practical application that we are talking about. This is all theory. It's not that I've been doing it or I've done it. It's still a learning and a theory for me also. So now, what did Vidura do after that? He went on a pilgrimage. Now, when he went on a pilgrimage, then what is it that is needed? Prabhupada is saying that such things like Vidura going on a pilgrimage is not possible by everyone. It is not possible by people like Kamsa or Jarasandha. That's the example that's given in the purport. There, they say that one has to be pious. We need to have some pious credits with us. If we are sinful, then we will not be able to undertake a pilgrimage like the one that Vidura undertook. It is not possible. So for that, again, Prabhupada takes the wonderful quote from Bhagavad Gita, where there is this verse in 7.28 which talks about Tesham tva antagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam dvanda moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridavratah. So where it says that persons who are sinful, asuras like Kamsa and Jarasandha, they cannot think of Lord Krishna as a supreme personality of Godhead, the absolute truth. Only those who are pure devotees, those who follow the regulative principles of religious life as prescribed in the scriptures, are able to engage themselves in the various yoga, that is karma yoga, or jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga, and can understand the pure consciousness. So we have to connect with the supreme personality of Godhead by any means. Yoga, by any of the yogas. Yoga means, we know the root word as yuj, which is to connect to the Lord. Otherwise, it will be just without that connection. It'll be some gymnastic exercise and so on and so forth. It's not that they'll not be able to do, but it'll be limited. But then if the connection has to happen, then we should have pious credits with us. And now, how do we get pious credits? And that's where Prabhupada is saying that this pilgrimage helps us to get pious credits. So pilgrimage that Vidura undertook is an opportunity that the Lord is giving as the deities. So pilgrimage means then it is all the places where there are temples. The big temples are there. And those temples have the Vigraha, the Archa Vigraha. So it is the mercy of the Archa Vigraha, or the Lord as the Archa Vigraha form. He is giving that mercy to all the people, so that when they come there, visit the place, take the association, do some seva to the Vigraha, then it is as good as doing that particular seva to the Lord, and thereby the mercy of the Lord begins to flow to that particular individual. So to eradicate the sin, pilgrimage to holy places is there, and that's what Prabhupada is saying in the purport. And so Prabhupada very rightly points out that it is not necessary that we just go visit your holy place and then come back, but one has to take association of sadhus there, hear from them, serve them, and then the Lord is present everywhere in that holy place as Archa Vigraha. And then he becomes very pleased when he sees that that this individual is coming there, and then he is serving my pure devotees, and thereby that pleases the Lord even more, and then the mercy begins to flow. So, in fact, the importance for the temples and then for the Archa Vigrahas were there. Even now it is there, of course. So people go to Tirupati, the Balaji temple. So many famous temples are there. Srirangam temples. There are thousands and thousands of temples, and then there are thousands and thousands of Archa Vigrahas. So the Lord has expanded in thousands and thousands of ways in various places, so that whichever is nearest to them, the person can go and associate. And then there is this wonderful history with regards to Vigraha that itself is a separate topic, but I'll just try to touch upon it. So where the devotees of the Lord, the pure devotees, have always had interactions with the deities, or they've had interactions with the Lord in the form of the deities that we have seen, like even in the recent past. What I mean by recent past is like 1,000 years back, 500 years back, so on and so forth. So a few examples that I have just made a note is with respect to Lord Varadarajaswami, that is in Kanchipuram, where there was this devotee of the Lord who's called as Kanchipur. He was actually speaking to the Lord. He used to go and then stand in front of the Lord. He used to speak to the Lord. The Lord used to reply, and then he used to come. So if you look at the pastimes or the of Ramanujacharya, there very clearly we can see various instances where Kanchipur has gone, and then he actually has a conversation with the Lord. He asks questions, and then it gets answered, and so on and so forth. So this way, the Lord's mercy is there, and then he extends it. He has extended it into the Archa Vigraha. And then in our own this thing also, we see the Sakshi Gopal story. We all know how the Lord agrees to become the witness, and then he comes. So there is a wonderful interaction there. And then we also seen how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he saw Lord Jagannath, then he actually goes into ecstasy. He faints. So devotees, based on their realization, they have different types of interactions with deities, and that is possible. So it is foolish for us to think that the deities that are there in the temple is just something which is made of stone or any other material, and not be able to connect it to Supreme Personality of Godhead, that's actually foolishness. That is immaturity or not having proper knowledge. So here Prabhupada mentions that to the extent that one is having the realization of the Lord reveals. So we know this. To the extent one is realized, to that extent the Lord reveals. But then, with respect to Archavigraha, there is an overriding comment or this thing. What it says is, in general, for all, he is there as Archavigraha. So Archavigraha is for everybody, but then the interactions can vary based on the amount of surrender. So whether it is an atheist or a theist or anybody, if they can go in front of the Lord, and then if they are showing signs of surrender, then the Lord reciprocates to that extent. So if somebody is surrendering more, then he'll reciprocate more. If it is less, then he'll reciprocate less. So that's what Yatamam Prapadante means, where Krishna himself is saying that. And then the aspect of how the Vigraha of the Lord are actually what do you call, they have the same potency as the Lord. It is not like, oh, it's a Vigraha, so the potency is less, so let me go to the Lord directly. Or it is not like this Vigraha is small, so the potency is small. The Vigraha in the other town is bigger, so the potency is more. No, that is not how it is, because Acha Vigraha are all authentic representations of the Lord, because there is a certain way in which they have come into being, and then there is a lot of seva that is being done, and thereby the Lord is accepting the service through the Archavigraha. So the potency of any Archavigraha is the same as that of the Lord. So there is no differentiation there with respect to size or anything like that. So that's what is coming out. And then, in fact, Prabhupada is taking a wonderful analogy of the post boxes and the post offices. And then he's saying how, if we think that the post office or the postal department as the Supreme Lord, then the post boxes that are there in every street corner in the city, which is spread out in many places, are like the Archavigrahas. So they will do the job. What is the job of the entire postal department is to deliver the letter from one place to another. And that's what Prabhupada is mentioning. So we all know that. Of course, today we don't get to see those because the concept of writing a letter and posting is not there. But anyway, we all have seen that and we understand what it is. So this particular post box, which is there at our street corner, if one is using that and then posting the letter, we can be assured that it gets picked up and then it will do its job. Means it will get done, it will get delivered. Or you go to the post office and then postal department and give the letter also, the same thing will happen. Wherever it has to go, it will reach. So it's not necessary that, oh, no, this is something that we have to do there only. So like that. I mean, it's just giving an analogy to help us understand how the post boxes also carry out the same function. And because they are actually authorized representations of the post office or the postal department in that particular area. In the same way, Archavigraha is an authorized representation or manifestation of the Lord, which is because of the mercy of the Lord, which is for the convenience of his devotees or of the people in general, so that they can come and then do seva, and thereby they will be able to get the mercy of the Lord. So in this way, the aspect of the post office also and the post boxes brought out so wonderfully by Prabhupada. And then when he was traveling, when he was making this progress as a pilgrim, he was never alone. He was alone, of course, but then the Lord was always with him. So though he traveled alone, he was always thinking of Krishna. So in one sense, a devotee is never alone because he has realized the presence of Krishna everywhere and in his heart also. So he becomes fearless. So that's the first symptom of a person who is realizing the Lord. So he becomes fearless because faith and knowledge makes that person fearless. And thereby he visited all the holy places, and then he was having the darshan of the Lord, and he was marveling at the thought of how mercifully the Lord has expanded everywhere. And he is giving an opportunity for the people to serve him, thereby benefit is for them. Generally, we think, oh, the Lord is being served and he likes to be served. No, he's giving a chance for us to serve him so that we get the benefit. It is not that he is getting something. So when we serve the Lord, that's not the mood in which we are supposed to do. Oh, look at the Lord, everything he is accepting. Oh, he wants all of this. No, he is accepting it because we are giving it, not otherwise. He is not asked for it. And then because we have decided to give it, he accepts it. Thereby, he is giving a chance for us to purify ourselves. So this way, Vidura was like seeing Krishna only and nothing else. And he was making this particular visit everywhere. And then he did not actually bother how he was looking. I mean, he didn't exhibit himself as Vidura. He didn't go about claiming, oh, you know who I am? I'm Vidura. I've come now. I should have the darshan now. Nothing of that sort. He was just like any ordinary person. Many of them didn't even know who was there, who was this person also. So in this way, without exposing himself of his material identity, he just went around various temples, and then he made himself more self-realized, or he made himself more God-realized, and then he was actually able to do some seva. And this is what is referred to as the pilgrim's progress in the subsequent purports, where it says that in this way a pilgrim makes a progress when he goes on a pilgrimage. He should not be too worried about the facilities that are there or not there, about the bed being not so good, or any of these other material things. But then, or maybe I don't have that many dresses I'm carrying, and so on and so forth. These are some of the things that generally trouble our mind. But then we'll have to step out of that particular thinking and then think of the Lord, think of the sadhu sangha or the expectation of sadhu sangha that will happen there. Always dwell on the thoughts of the Lord, dwell on Krishna, and then just accept what is coming our way. Like in Kannada, there is one saying, I don't know if many of you know Kannada, Palik bandiddu panchamrita. So whatever is coming as our share, that itself is panchamrita. So accepting the fact that whatever comes my way is the mercy of the Lord, and then accepting it wholeheartedly is the way forward. I mean, that's how pure devotees see it, and then they don't get unnecessarily distracted by other things. Oh, see, he got more, I got less, any of those seemingly trivial things. So now it feels so funny when we hear such things. But then in that situation, we do get such thoughts, what to do. So that's how we are conditioned. So we'll have to set aside that particular thought and then accept, depend on the Lord, and then move on. So while traveling, he performed his duties as a pilgrim, satisfy the Lord. So all this is being done to satisfy the Lord. That's all, nothing else. Haritoshanam. There's another verse also where it says, Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. So we just have to please the Lord. And then when we are able to please the Lord by any action, that action becomes bhakti. And that bhakti is ahituki bhakti, without any material motivation or any of those things. When we do a certain seva and then that pleases the Lord, then it is bhakti. So like this, our aim should be only to please the Lord and nothing else. Not be worried about the baggage that we carry or the social obligations that are there, the dress that one is wearing, or I mean whatever, So we have to remain absorbed in Krishna and not allow our mind to deviate too much into all these things. So that's the whole thing. And now we have seen how in the olden days they all did this pilgrimage. Anybody you take, they went on a pilgrimage. Who are the people who went on pilgrimage? Now Vidura, we know he went on a pilgrimage. Balaram, he went on a pilgrimage because the war was starting and then he didn't want to be there. So Arjuna also went on a pilgrimage when he was banished. I mean, because he had to leave because he broke a certain rule. So 1 year he had to go out, so he went on a pilgrimage. So like this, we know that everybody went on a pilgrimage. Why were they doing that? Because that we are talking about, these things happened in a different yuga, which is the Dwapara Yuga. And there, in the Dwapara Yuga, the Yuga Dharma is visiting the holy places. Now, when we look at our Yuga, we are in the Kali Yuga. And in Kali Yuga, what is the Yuga Dharma? That is Nama Sankirtan, chanting. So whatever benefits that these people have got by way of pilgrimage, by way of a successful pilgrimage, same benefit people in Kali Yuga will get by doing Nama Sankirtan and nothing else. So clearly it is mentioned that the one has to follow the Yuga Dharma. All of them, they were following their Yuga Dharma because they were in Dwapar Yuga and they did all this pilgrimage, and thereby they got the benefit. So Srila Prabhupada said that, temples actually there is no need. I mean, we are not trying to trivialize, but then I'm just saying because of the Yuga, the age we are in, Prabhupada was also not very keen on developing so many temples. But then he said, we have to just sit and chant in one place. But what to do? People will not come if we don't have temples. So we'll have to build temples. But then in the temple, the main thing what we are saying is to sit and chant and then engage in the service, and then thereby make the connection to the Lord. So for us, the thread is the thread of chanting, the thread of Sankirtan. What is the chanting that we are doing? We are chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By chanting the holy name of the Lord, we are actually doing our Yuga Dharma, and that is something that is given to us specifically by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we have so much of mercy being channelized into this process of chanting because of the weight it carries, like Radharani, Krishna, from Krishna, of course, and then Radharani, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then the whole parampara up to Srila Prabhupada, the Shad Goswami, so many, all of their mercy is kind of built into it. It has got added and then accumulated. It's like a cumulative, it's a sigma of all of their mercies that is coming in our way. So the moment we accept this chanting, then we surrender to this activity of chanting, then the mercy is, that is a mercy that is almost palpable. All of us, we have realized it in many ways, how by chanting, we are able to comprehend things better. We are able to do things better than what we were before. Like, my today seems to be a little better than yesterday in terms of spiritualism, though I'm not anywhere there, but then small step. But then we realize that this particular change is happening. Why is this change happening? It is because of the mercy that is flowing through, and that is because of the extent of surrender that we have. Now, the same thing that we discussed with respect to pilgrimage, you put it across for chanting, for Nama Sankirtan, then we will be able to get the maximum benefit out of that, thereby help us to please the Lord. And by pleasing the Lord, then it will give us the benefit of, the prajna, which is of becoming more and more detached and then becoming more and more closer to the Lord, which is the ultimate aim of our life. So this double mercy is something that we should not ignore. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is called as Mahavadanyaya. He's so munificent. Even though there is no qualification, even though we have not made any effort, even though we have not made any effort to pack our things and then take on an arduous journey of walking all the way there. See, so much of austerity was there in pilgrimage earlier. Now there is nothing. Morning you sit in the flight, evening you are in Mathura, and then you go and then visit, and then you can come back the same day. So the austerity levels are so minuscule. But then there is a lot of austerity to sit and chant, to keep the mind in one place and then do that. For that, we need the mercy. And then once we are able to do that, then our lives become successful. So in this way, by Vidura's reaction to an awkward situation, we understand what is it that he did, and also we understand what is it that we all need to do when we are in an awkward situation. And we may not get there, but then we'll have to try it. We'll have to keep trying. We'll have to get there. We know the end state, and then we know where we are. Individually, we all know. We realize that. And then we have to pray to the Lord, surrender to the Harinam, and then beg their mercy so that we are able to move towards that. Whether we reach there or not, of course, it will depend on the mercy of the Lord. But at least from our side, we'll have to make that effort. And that is the practical application of all the teachings that we have seen. So on that note, I'll stop here. It is 10:30. So if there are any comments or questions anybody has, please go ahead. Otherwise, thank you so much. Hare Krishna. And then was pronounced to all of you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Padma Mataji, do you have a question?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah.
I want to find out, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, in text 17, it says, at Mandara Hill, Krishna is like Madhusudana. He is present as Madhusudana. Where's Mandara Hill, Prabhuji?
Yeah, Mataji, Mandara Hill is, I'm not very sure. If anybody is knowing where it is, then they can tell. I think we are seeing various examples or various places where the Lord is there, and where in each of the place there is a certain quality or a speciality of the Lord. The Mathura is the birthplace of Lord as Adi Keshava, and then in Puri as Lord Jagannath, also known as Purushottama and all that. And then it says that in Mandara Hill he is present as Madhusudana. So I'm not sure where this Mandara Hill is. If anybody is aware, they can go ahead and then tell.
Okay, Prabhu. Also, one more thing. They say that Mayapur is known as Hari, not as Madhava.
Yeah, Hari, because he is taking away. See, the names can vary, So in Mayapur, now we have Radha Madhav there, but then he is Hari also, right? I mean, he is the one who takes away all our, all our negatives. He takes it away. So he snatches it.
I thought he is only known as Madhava. That's why I just want to clarify, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Mataji, in one sense, the names can be many, but yeah, the names will help us to relate to the quality of the Lord and then the nature of Him. So from that perspective, at least for me, I'm not very sure or I don't get too involved in those names because I know collectively all of it is the summation for the Lord, or even more than that. It's not that the collection of all these qualities is equal to the Lord. It's much more than that. So there are many more which are not represented by the Lord. So that's the understanding that we need to have. Thereby, we will be able to, appreciate these small interactions and then the single quality that comes across strongly in certain kshetra or in certain dhams or in certain leelas, pastimes, so on and so forth. So that's what I can say now. I'm sorry I'm not able to answer you the way you expected, but this is what I would, my view to it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just have a doubt on on Chaitanya Charita, like in the names, Prabhu, they say you should chant with the primary name. So Krishna is a primary name, clear. Devaki Nandan, Madhusudana are all primary names, fine. But they say Mayavadi sometimes chant with Chaitanya, which is not accepted, which is a secondary name. I think in the last class, when you read, this came up, and yes. I couldn't talk to you. So I was a little confused. Isn't Chaitanya also primary name, Prabhu?
Yes, Chaitanya also is the primary name, but then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself says that you chant Krishna. He is saying that he never said you chant my name also, it is okay. He never said that. So we just follow what our acharyas are saying. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's name we can take. Of course, we take his name and then start the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. But then we don't use that as the primary name and then continue to chant only that. So that is not allowed or it is not done simply because he did not say that. He didn't approve that. So he just said chant Hare Krishna and we are chanting.
Sure, Prabhu. And also sometimes many of them, sometimes randomly advise like Panchatattva mantra, we say once before chanting the 108 beat round. Sometimes they say like 108 itself you can do Panchatattva. Is that true, Prabhu, or is it just, yeah, okay.
We can do, many people, some people do. I know some people who do that 108 times. So it is like you're praying more so that I'll be able to chant. See, why are we chanting the Panchatattva mantra? So that we are actually aligning ourselves to the Maha Mantra, to the Parampara, to Panchatattva, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then all the 5 of them. So sometimes, we are not able to concentrate on the thing because mind is agitated. Then there are instances where instructions are given where we can explore this option of chanting the Panchatattva mantra more because they are more merciful, they are more munificent. So instead of 3 times, then somebody does it full round and then they move on because then thereby they feel that they are able to connect better. So it is again one-on-one, whichever is not convenient, I would say, whichever they feel is making their faith stronger in the Maha Mantra. To that extent, they can go ahead and then do it.
Understood, Prabhu. So the core is Maha Mantra and these come.
Core is Maha Mantra, absolutely. Sure. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never said that, okay, you chant my name. He never even said that you worship me. In fact, he was here showing how to be a devotee of Krishna.
Clear, Prabhu. Absolutely spot. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Divya Prema Mataji.
Yeah, Prabhu, in the class you were saying that Prakriti Kriyamanani. So nature is the doer, but basically when we counsel someone, right, we say, right, you are the whatever is happening to you because of your bad karma you have done and your desires, the thing is happening to you. How to relate, Prabhu? Like,
nice question, Mataji. See, what happens is when we say you are the doer, no doubt, but then you are doing because something is being forced. There is a force that is acting on you, which is forcing you to do that. Like a person who is possessed by as an example, I'm saying, possessed by a ghost, that he or she will behave in a certain way. But that actions, even though he or she did it, it is because of the influence of that particular ghost or that thing which is there inside. So now, both statements can be true, like depend on how you see it. So is it that he didn't do it, but then it is that he was possessed, so he did it. But then he's still responsible for it, right? In one way, because he did it. So in one sense, it is yes as well as it is no. So like that, we will have to see this. Because we desired for something, we did certain things, and for that we have some reaction. And based on that reactions, then we have been given a certain disposition or a nature, and that nature is making us act like this. So though we are actually, in one sense, there is responsibility. So the reaction of what we do is coming to us, but then we are not the doers. So it's actually even more worse actually than we thought it was, because somebody might argue that I am not the doer, so why should I get the reaction? No, it's not like that. So with this kind of analogy, I hope it helps to understand that particular statement. And then also, these things, what we just spoke today in detail, especially the whole of this class, I know it took a long time discussing about how our mind is working, how we should position ourselves and all that. This thinking is all only for our own self. This is not for another. This whole thing, I cannot say, okay, this is like this, it is for you. No, it is for me. It is for our own self. So we will have to take this thought process or this particular chain of thinking for our own self. And then we can't say it is for others. Like they say, no, like you should not be judgmental, but then you should be the worst critic for yourself so that you are able to improve. So like that, these things are all for me. It is not for the others. So in that way, because if we start applying it everywhere, then we will come to very wrong conclusions and we'll get confused and so on and so forth. So it's more for us, for our own this thing.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, what your kind self has told today, it is almost applicable in regular course of our life.
Yes.
Am I right, Prabhuji?
Yes.
So sequence creates. We can able to analyze that this is the sequence is the third person is acting in the mode of nature. To some extent, we will move. For that reaction, tolerance, so we can tolerate, and then we can move up to forgive. Even after all committing these efforts, will the situation change? Will the situation will continue as it is? Then how we have to act for that.
See, actually, generally what happens is whenever we talk about such things, we just limit it to that and then forgiveness, all of that. But I also touched upon this other point where Prabhupada very clearly brought out that, where he says that we need to link it to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only when that link is happening, then all this bears some more sense it begins to make. And then the reciprocation is also there. And then we will also realize, otherwise it will be like, same thing is repeating. Okay, that in situation happened, I controlled, I forgave, I did all that. Then the next time also the same thing happened. Next time also I'm doing the same thing. But then every day, day in and day out, we keep on doing. Every time we are able to, let us say, forgive or tolerate and all that. But if you are not able to link it to the Lord, then we get frustrated. We go into depression. There are other more intense things that will happen to us, which we all know. I mean, if day in and day out it keeps on happening, then we know where we will be. We'll become a wreck. Then the moment the connection to the Lord is happening, then that's a safeguard for us. Then we will ensure that then the mercy of the Lord is there, because this is surrender, and it becomes spiritual. It is no longer material. It is not just material intelligence. It is spiritual intelligence. That is why we say when we talk about intelligence, there are two types of intelligence. One is material intelligence. Generally, we come up to that point and then leave it and then say, okay, let me do it again. And we do it for 6 months, 1 year, then we give up because we are just using material intelligence. We would have learned somewhere all these things and then, okay, let me follow. But then spiritual intelligence says that we need to connect it to the higher. We need to connect it to Krishna, to the Supreme Personality. Then there is a mercy that comes from him, because on my own I cannot do. I'll have to charge myself from the Supreme or through the Parampara. Then it will not be like you feared just now. What will happen? Will I be able to do it day in and day out? All that fear, anxiety will go away because you are just doing it because everything is Krishna, and then you're seeing it from that perspective. Then everything changes and it becomes easy. That's why they say, no, Bhavasagara crossing is like a ocean. It is Sagara. Then it gets reduced to a water collected in the hoof of a calf if we surrender to the Lord. Then how easily one can step over it, it becomes so easy. Otherwise, it is like an ocean. So that analogy will help here. It is very applicable here because we are thinking, oh, it's so undaunting it is. But then the moment you start connecting, it becomes very easy because it is Krishna who is acting then. He gives us that strength and the energy and the intelligence. And that is spiritual intelligence. I hope it answered.
Then, Prabhuji, then this is a simple thing there, what you have told. From material nature to, we have to skip to the spiritual nature.
Yes, yes. And that material becomes spiritual by connecting it to Krishna. That's all. Very true.
Okay. I do understand. I can. Thank you, Prabhuji. I'm grateful to you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Just one last question. Sorry, Prabhu. So the typical thing from Chaitanya Prabhu, 3rd verse is Trinadapi Sunishena Tharorapi. So you be as humble as a grass and like a tree, you know that. So at same way, in Krishna, in Bhagavad Gita says that, Arjuna, you don't leave your path and don't run away. To a sannyasi, you're a Kshatriya, you have to fight. Now, where I'm coming from, Prabhu, is most of the time, especially sometimes when they ask this question, I get confused. So when should you fight? And when should you not fight? So one answer they tell is when it comes to somebody's benefit, you fight. When it comes to your own self, you can give up, you can tolerate. So this is general. But most of the time, this question is asked from a property point of view. They say, if there's a property dispute and you feel it's other, should you fight or not? Should you tell it's personal? Or should you tell it the property involves my wife, my children? So it is again somebody else and therefore I have to fight? Or should you fight for the property and give to Krishna? Which of this is the right answer? I always get stuck if someone asks me this question. So can you help me with this?
Mataji, this is a very deep question, and then the answer is not definitive like that. It is situational. It will depend on the position of that particular individual, and then where he or she is coming from. What is it that they would like to hear? And that's one aspect to it. The other aspect is, what is their nature? If their nature is to fight and then they don't, or something like that, and then they don't know. That is another thing. The third thing is, maybe the question is right, but then they are asking the wrong person, because we will not be able to decide. We will not be able to decide because at least I'm not an authority. If somebody is asking me this question, then I would ask them to, I would just hold a mirror and make them reflect themselves and then come to a conclusion. If they are still confused, then go to a higher up and then see how they can take it forward, because they might have another perspective to it. Because these are very tricky questions, because the outcome, immediately they'll blame. So they'll see, you told me to fight, now you see this happened. So now why did Krishna do it? So we get into a different loop by giving out an answer, because such things are not like it has a straight answer to it. It's an yes or a no. It will depend on that individual. And then it will also depend on the realization that individual has. So all that will be able, only a very senior person or a guru will be able to see that. So that is why when somebody is asking this, a generic reply would be, I don't know. I will not judge for myself. I will just do what I have been told to do. That's another way of looking at it. Like how you just mentioned, no? That it's like it is for my own self, then I will not do so. And then that's one way. And another other way is, like if somebody else, if I've been asked to do within the parampara, there's an instruction, then I will just do it. And then I'm willing to take the consequence of it. And that's another thing. They want us, they are attached to a certain result, or they are open both ways, whether this goes this way or that way. Either way, I'm okay. But then maybe I have to get that share, so maybe I need to fight it. That is okay. So it depends on how much detached or attached that person is. So some people are very detached. They will just say, okay, but this is not right, so let me make my claim. And then if it comes, it is okay. If it doesn't come also, it is okay. So there are multiple ways of seeing it, Mataji. I'm just throwing things at random. These are thoughts that come to me. And I would say that we would not go directly and then answer such a question, because there are too many parameters that are there. And in one sense, we, or rather I, am not competent to make that kind of a judgment or advice to that person, because we don't know really that person, that individual, and what frame of mind he or she is in.
Got it. Thank you so much.
It's difficult to answer. So best is to be frank about it and not answer, and then hold a mirror. That helps. Many times, most of the times, we just make them see things. Is that what you meant? Do you really mean? And why do you say that? What makes you say that? Is it because you have that type of a feeling, which maybe is that a reason? Then it's like reflective, and then they themselves will start analyzing, I mean, aloud with you. And then they will realize, okay, then maybe I need to really figure out whether I need it or not. So, okay, then they'll say thank you. So you have not actually told do or don't do, but you have made them see in different perspectives. That helps a lot. I mean, this is generally what I do, so I'm just sharing it. It's not that I'm right every time. That is also there.
No, Prabhu. I think the answer is absolute. So, and the only thing makes me feel hurt is every time you tell you're not competent, it will be nice when you continue to use the word we, because that's why we are asking you the question.
Yeah. Yes.
Sure.
It has to be we. I mean, I just said I, but then I turned to we, and we have to do the same thing with all of them, because all of us are in the same boat. So
sure, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that question.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So we'll do a Vaishnava Pranam and end the session.
Yes, Mataji.
Ancha kalpatarubhyascha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Koti Vaishnava Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Shall I end the session, Prabhu?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah.